wine, butterhorns, and murder. What could be better? Join us today as we chat with culinary cozy author Joy Ribar about her latest Deep Lakes mystery, Deep Dire Harvest. Welcome to Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews, and welcome to you, Joy.
Thanks, Sharon. So now that the commercial portion is over, should I put my book down or
Yeah,
or
yeah,
should I
but it is
talk
a
about
great
my book the
cover.
whole
I
time?
love it.
I do too. I have a really great cover designer. His name is Tom Heffron, and we kind of collaborate together. I have ideas. What I don't have is any kind of illustration creativity. So
Right.
I let him figure out how it's going to go. And I mean, I'm a word person, but he does a great job and I love it. I love having a catchy cover,
Mhm.
it's helpful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. All right,
It
so
is. Well,
let's just jump right into questions. Bountiful Wines,
okay.
which is Frankie, your main character's winery, is in harvest season, and Frankie goes out every morning and does a sugar testing to make sure, the
Yes.
exact time to pick the grapes, which I've never heard of before. I thought that was fascinating. So, can you tell us a little bit about sugar testing?
Sure. Once once your grapes start to ripen in the vineyard, then vintners are testing for sugar every single day. So what you do is you walk down a row of the same variety of grapes and you pick random grapes from all different clusters because in a row, um, grapes up above, grapes down below, and grapes in the middle of the row, everybody gets a different amount of sunshine. And so you want a random sampling. And then what you do, you take that cluster and you put them in a little hand press and you squeeze all the juice out and you squeeze it into something called a refractometer.
Nice.
And it measures the sugar, which is also like winemakers call it brix, BRIX. It's the brix measurement. And there's for every variety of wine, there's a sweet spot where you want that sugar content to fall. Believe it or not, if it gets to be too sweet, then a lot of wines end up tasting foxy, which is that kind of musky, sickening, almost cough syrupy, sweet.
Yeah.
Um, Flavor that you don't want. So it's really important to have the right amount of sugar content. Whatever sugar in the grapes is available, it's available for fermentation. You can't have too little and you don't want to have too much. You can always up sugar during fermentation. There are winemakers that will actually add sugaring in if they need to, if they don't have their alcohol content up to the percentage they want once they start making wine. So yeah, it's a process. And so yeah, it's pretty simple though. I mean, you just have a little, it's just a tiny little kit that you take with you and it's very portable and it gives you the reading and then you move on with life and decide when you're going to pick your grapes. Yeah.
Yeah, I had no idea it was like a down to the day kind of thing. I just figure, oh, it's harvest season, harvest. So I've really been enjoying learning about the whole grape vintner process through these
Me
books.
too. Thanks. Me too. I mean, I do a lot of research and I've helped vineyards pick grapes and they will say, you're literally on call. We'll email you if it's gonna or call you if it's gonna be tomorrow. So, you just and if you can show up and help pick, they love having volunteers come and help pick.
I would imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so what is the biggest natural threat to grapes? You mentioned deer and robins and sabotage. What else?
Sabotage, yeah. Sabotage isn't supposed to happen, but yes, yeah, yeah. It's a little foreshadowing of what could happen in this book. Um, yeah, well, white-tailed deer will eat anything. They love everything. And actually, flocks of robins will come in the well, let me backtrack a little bit. Once you think your grapes are really getting ready to ripen, you want to immediately protect them. So you put these giant nets and they actually go over the entire rows in the vineyard, and then they stake down along the outside of the rows, and so they're really kind of like a screen that still lets sunshine and rain come in, but it keeps the critters out.
Yeah.
But once you're done, when you say, well, we're done, we've picked everything we're going to pick, as soon as they open those nets up, robins will just flock in and they'll do all the cleanup of any leftover grapes. And it's so cool to see. Well, I mean, probably not cool if you're a wine grower, but I've been to a vineyard where the robins were all over the place on migrating through and just cleaning and gleaning the vineyard. But turkeys are terrible. Um, by the time grape season is, ready for the picking, turkeys already have babies. So they have giant families and they're traveling in their giant family groups, and they'll travel with several adults and several youngsters, and they will just come through, and they're not called gobblers for nothing. They'll gobble up grapes in the vineyard. I mean, they're so fast. Um, so yeah, there's always something else. Anybody who does any kind of agricultural farming or crop growing has something to think about every season of the year.
Well, okay, so you mentioned robins and turkeys. This book is very focused on birding. And so I have a couple of questions. I just want to go with that because I've recently moved to the mountains and I am having so much fun looking at birds. I got the Audubon app and
Nice,
anyway, so I
nice. Yeah.
so this book for me was particularly well timed because of that. So one of the things that I love is all of the character names that were associated with birds. So can you tell us some of those character names?
Yeah, I really had fun with this book. I just decided to go all out. So the ornithologist, who is the focal point of this book, her name is Fern Mallard. And because her family's last name is Mallard and her whole family kind of ends up being involved in this book, I said, well, they're all nature lovers. So I thought, well, I'm going to give them all names associated with nature in some way or another. So Fern's mother's name is Flora, and then she has an uncle Drake and an aunt Willow, and then they were part of this little sensational six group of cousins that were as they were growing up, and so all the cousins were Cherry and Pomelo, who is called Pom in the book, and Ivy and Ash, and even Fern's fiance's name is his last name is Finchley.
Yeah, it was very fun. I'm like, oh, another bird. It's like a little
Yeah,
scavenger
and
hunt
her
that
and her
you're
field
reading.
assistant is Robin, of course.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
really, really kind of fun. So,
Thanks.
do you bird watch? You're traveling now. Do you just get out there with binoculars and look around?
I do. I keep a life list, which once you get really into birding and once you decide that I can't keep track of how many different varieties I've seen, then you need a life list and you can buy a book. I think the Audubon Society sells them, and you put little check marks and little field notes like I saw this bird in Florida and I saw this bird in Wisconsin, and so I have a life list, and I belonged to a bird club when I was in Wisconsin, and so it was exciting to go to travel all over now and to scope out birds. I have my binoculars, I have my field guide, and I also, like you, I have an app. I have an app that's called Merlin, and the Merlin app will let you record the bird sound. So if you can't find the bird because they're so good at camouflaging and hiding themselves, um, and you like I did that in South Carolina. I've heard this bird every single day and it's singing up a storm. What is this bird? And I recorded it, and the Merlin app said, that's a Carolina wren.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I was trying to use the Audubon apps. And there's like a tweet, whistle, anyway, there's like 7 different categories of sound, and I played them all. I'm like, these all sound exactly the same to me, and nothing like the bird that is outside. So I'm gonna get the Merlin app. Thank you for that tip.
And the thing with birds too is, they go through cycles like we do. So when they're communicating, like if it's mating season, they have a different call and a, different song because they want to be attractive. And if they're trying to communicate and scold their babies, or if they're scolding you because you're in the way, they have a lot of different kinds of calls. So, it's just not always consistent with birding, which makes it fun. I mean, that's the challenging part of it.
Absolutely. So speaking of travels, you are on the road these days.
We
So
are.
tell us, what is your writing process now that you are traveling across the country?
It it isn't a whole lot different than it was before. I have my very specific writing time. It's just that now I have a different writing perch. So instead of, I always shared an office with my husband anyway, because he is a computer software engineer. So he's working on a computer. Right now, he's working right across the table from me with headphones on, so he can't hear our conversation. But yeah, we can share a very small space amazingly and be in our zone, and that's me. I'm pretty good working without distractions. If I The only thing that is distracting to me is hunger. If there's wildlife outside my window, that all bets are off. If all of a
Right.
sudden
Yeah.
I'm grabbing the back and poking my nose out the door of the window instead, and otherwise I find I can immerse myself in my writing world pretty well. I mean, I think as writers, we have to do that. Plus, if we're not interested in our writing world, who else is going to be?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so it's
Well, and
it's an easy
I
place
would,
to locate.
you said something there about if you're hungry, and I don't see how you can write what you write and not be hungry all the time, because you're like butter horns and tarts and quiches and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That's
So that
fun.
must be a little bit of a challenge. Yeah, my main character, I'm a vegetarian and my main character is not, so I'm never tempted by what she's eating.
That's so funny. That's very funny. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, that is the challenge though, because even though, I mean, our characters are not us, even though people think a lot of times we take pieces of ourselves. Of course you do. But, you couldn't not every character could be a vegetarian, or not every character could be, like a glutton or either. You know, you need that authenticity and that variety. So you have to be really open to, like, what is this character telling me about themselves?
Right. Yeah,
Even
exactly.
down to their eating habits.
Well, I was at a conference once where somebody was talking about character development, and she said, what is in your character's refrigerator and what is in your character's trash can? And when I started doing that, especially with my villains, I was like, oh, this is fun. Because
I love it. I'm going to try that. Oh, I love
think it,
that.
I think it was just Lowry, if that's how you say her name, who is just delightful to listen to. But yeah, just a great tip for I don't quite have a handle on this character yet, and this is why I don't know what's in their trash. What are they hiding? It's a
That is
great little
such
tip.
a great exercise. I love it. I love stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah.
Okay, so going back to you're on the road, are we going to see a series based on RV travel? Because that would be fun.
Not yet.
Not yet.
I did start writing a new series, and that character is firmly planted because she's a college professor, so she's pretty firmly planted in her home community. But I did come up with Frankie taking a road trip with her very mischievous Aunt Cece, because Aunt Cece has a reunion and they're going to rent an RV and they're going to all convene together. And of course, there will be a murder.
Of course,
So I
but
have
oh,
that.
that will be so much fun. I love Cece.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. Yeah, so that will be in the works, but it won't be the next book, because as I'm finishing up book one of this new series, I'm also working on the next Frankie book, and that one is going to focus on her daughter's wedding, and it's called Deep Wedded Blues, which might be a little, it might be a clue right there. Um, yeah, there's going to be a lot of little twists and turns going on in that one too.
as always, yeah.
Because you
Well,
have to.
Frankie does so much, and so there's no way that like she can just stay on the straight and narrow. There's too many different things that are happening in her various parts of her life. So,
Yes. And
yeah.
she's going to run into a relationship challenge with Garrett. I know at the last book event I did, people said to me, "Oh, Deep Water Blues, Frankie's getting married." I said, "No."
No.
I said, "No. Sorry. Not
But
this
I really love Garrett. I love
I do too.
the she calls him G, and yeah. Oops.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. I do too. So I hope that they can work out their little glitchy problem that's going to come up in the next novel.
Well, you might want to talk to the author about that.
Yeah, I know. I know. Sometimes you have to give the people what they want. Sometimes you disappoint the people.
Well, you can have a little conflict as long as, in the next book, that little conflict is, maybe worked out. I don't
Yeah. No, I'm like you. I'm like you. I like resolution. Yeah, conflict is great, but I really like resolution. So, I think you probably know where I'm going.
Okay. I will prepare myself. Okay, so we talked a little bit about this, but if we have wedding 2 books away, what's going to happen with Frankie and Deep Lakes in the next book? Oh,
Okay.
no.
So, yeah. So
Wedding is
back,
this book. RV
yeah,
is book
yep,
after.
that
So,
will
okay.
be, yeah, that will be the next book. So we're going to jump ahead from, like, this last book is fall, and I tend to try to go season by season, but I'm going to do more jumping around now because I really want Frankie's daughter, she'll be in the wedding season of Wisconsin and probably everywhere, which is June.
June.
So
Yeah.
Frankie will be highly involved in planning for this wedding. Um, but there will definitely be problems there. and and of course she'll have to be including um a really strange set of circumstances that will take us to her daughter works at is an RN at a hospital. So it'll
Mhm.
take us to the hospital. It's going to involve some really weird kind of illness that people can't that becomes a kind of a crisis point. It's nothing like COVID. It isn't.
No, not any
I'm
mystery.
not writing a COVID book. Um, but it'll definitely put a damper on the wedding. And of course, Frankie, who's all about like, well, we got to get to the bottom of this, even though she knows nothing about illnesses and viruses and where they come from, she will certainly be investigating anyway.
Because you can't hold a good reporter down.
Nope, for sure. She's got to get to the
Well,
bottom of it, or there might not be a wedding.
and weddings are important to moms, um, daughters as well. But yeah, so um, oh, sorry.
Okay.
I know I was kind of in a wrapping up point, but you said something, and I thought of a question that I just wanted to ask. Oh, June in this Deep Lakes community, tourist season. So how many tourists would be likely to flood the streets of a town like this in June?
Oh, yeah. No, that's a
All of
really
them.
good question. I mean, you get and well, there is a very popular tourist town in Wisconsin called Wisconsin Dells. And so I kind of look at that as my I guess as the ideal or the epitome of what tourist season would look like. And Wisconsin Dells is only about 3,000 people all year round, but in the summer it's well over 100,000 people.
My gosh.
So it's crazy. It is really crazy. It is really crazy. And I don't know sometimes what these places, they have plenty of hotels, so they have plenty of places to put people, but the traffic is miserable. I mean, if you just don't want to, if you live in Wisconsin, you really, if you lived in the Dells, you just don't
Mhm.
want to go anywhere. You don't, I mean, you don't want to even be out on the roads, because it's just constant constant start stop traffic. And of course, the streets are just filled with people everywhere, which is great. It's great for it's
Yeah.
a great industry. So I think like a town like Deep Lakes, maybe scaled back a little bit, would still have tens of thousands. I mean, they probably would get 10,000 visitors in a weekend.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah. That would be really
yeah,
hard to plan around. I mean, I guess people who live there are used to it, um,
yeah.
but
Well,
yeah,
people
when Frankie's like planning out menus and doing all those things, it's like, oh, it's tourist season.
Yeah, and realistically, just like around here, if we go somewhere during tourist season and it's a popular place, they might say, at 9 in the morning, they might say, "Sorry, we're out. We don't have any. We have no more bakery, or we don't have breakfast. I mean, breakfast. We sold out of everything for breakfast." I just met my sister. I was dropping books off at a really cute little touristy town yesterday, which is Thursday, but it's really close to Memorial Weekend. A lot of times people start like, let me start my vacation or my weekend a little earlier when it's a holiday weekend. And so yesterday we went to this place we always go to get quiche, and they said, "Oh, we don't have any more quiche." I said, "Well, what's your savory pastry today?" "Well, if we had any, it would be good." "Okay, but what is your soup?" "Well, all we have left." I'm like, it was noon, and we're looking at each other going, "I guess we can't have lunch here." So you get used to when things get busy, you just get used to people running out of things.
Oh, all right. Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the time to stop and chat today. It's always fun chatting with you, so I
Thank
really
you.
was looking forward to this, and as
Thank
always, I
you.
just really enjoyed it. So,
Thank you.
and thank you all for watching Blackbird Writers Presents Author Interviews.
Bye, everybody.